The Center for Disease Control, or CDC, is asking Americans to wear masks to prevent the spread of COVID-19. It's important to remember for people who are victims of sexual assault that masks and face coverings can trigger anxiety and fear. Wearing a face covering can trigger memories of abuse, such as the feeling of having a hand covering your mouth or your face being pushed into a pillow. Wearing a mask can make people feel claustrophobic and cause them to lose control of their breathing. Victims, also known as survivors, have reported that not being able to see the faces of those around them is intimidating and makes them worried. Here are possible solutions. 1. Practice wearing your face covering at home. Take the time to get used to how it feels on your face. 2. Find the right face covering, one that is comfortable and doesn't irritate you. 3. Get creative. Maybe wearing a scarf or a handkerchief is less restrictive. 4. Make it smell good. Use a scent that makes you feel relaxed, like lavender. 5. Ask your loved ones for support. Take walks with someone you love to ease into wearing a mask in public. They can also help you find the right covering. We hope that victims and survivors are able to wear a mask safely, but if wearing a face covering causes severe distress, be confident in your decision to not wear one. No survivor should feel shamed for not being able to wear a mask. Stand with survivors in the days ahead. Please show your support for survivors by treating anyone who is not wearing a mask with compassion and dignity.
Let me pull out my thing or pistol. Bing. Hold up. Oh, dude, I gotta go.
Where you gotta go?
I gotta go bingo.
Why I gotta go bingo?
Because there's gonna be a lot of girls.
No way.
But you got any pickup lines I could use?
Oh, I got a ton. Try this one. Hey girl, you wanna be the bunny to my popo?
No.
Man. Oh, this one always works. Hey girl, you so OGL.
What's OGL?
Oh nga la.
Oh, nah. I need something that could actually work.
Man, those always work. If they didn't, what would you even do?
I'll be like, hey girl, you so fine.
Nah, man, that ain't cool, dog. It might be okay to pick up on a girl, but it's never okay to hit a girl. It's on us to stop domestic violence.
One in 3 girls in the United States is a victim of physical, emotional, or verbal abuse.
81% of parents believe teen dating violence is not an issue.
All genders, female, males, and transgender can be a victim too.
If you notice any sign of an unhealthy relationship, stop and do something.
Stop teen dating violence.
Teen dating violence. Teen dating violence is the physical or sexual abuse within a dating relationship. This girl was abused by her partner. She was hurt physically and helpless. There is no one she could turn to. She was all alone. questions, please call American Alliance 699-0272 and Blue Sky 699-2759. Thank you for watching.
Talofa America Samoa, the COVID vaccines are here. Having a vaccine available is a really important step in ending the pandemic, and we have 2 types of vaccines here now, but they won't do any good stuck in a freezer. I know some people are worried that these new vaccines might need more study, but the data has shown that they're both safe and effective. Millions of healthcare workers have already gotten their 2 doses. You also may have heard about people feeling a bit sick after getting their COVID vaccine, but please don't let that deter you. The vaccine is designed to train your immune system to fight off COVID. Side effects don't last that long, and there's no virus in the vaccine and no preservatives to worry about either. Soon, it's going to be your turn. So get your questions answered now and be ready to line up as soon as you're able. We don't want you to miss out on your shot.
Good. How was bingo?
It was alright.
What happened?
I was in it with the girl. Everything was working fine, but then she just stopped.
Man, she didn't even want you.
No, she did.
Did she
I
say
know.
no?
Yeah, but
Man, no always means no. Watch. Dad, come here fast. Tell him.
Alright, check it, Uncle. I was in it with the girl, and we just got caught up in the moment.
Hold on a moment. No always means no. And yes does not always mean yes.
But her body language.
You need to respect that girl's choices. She's got the right to say no at any time.
What if her body language says yes?
No consent is no consent.
Makke.
Greetings and talofa, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at this hour. It is 10 a.m. Thursday, June 29th, 2023. And I hope you are all having a great day so far. I am Monica Livia Vea, Community Educator for the American Samoa Alliance Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. I will be your host and facilitator for today's webinar. Today's webinar is made possible by the American Samoa Alliance Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. So if you're interested in finding out more information on that, you can visit our website at www.asalliance.co, and you can also visit our Facebook page, which we are streaming live on at the moment under American Samoa Alliance Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. So today's webinar is entitled Through the Cultural Lens, elder abuse during a pandemic. Elder abuse is never a topic of discussion in a culture where the elders are regarded as treasures, and caring for them is, our source of blessing. But, unfortunately, things like this, it does happen, but there have been several changes in our community and within our communities that have taken effect on the care provided for our seniors. For instance, what did self-neglect, suffering from dementia, financial exploitation, etc., look like for our senior citizens during COVID? Let's uncover that by understanding elder abuse, our code annotated law that protects the elders, available resources for support, and how we advocate from the outside looking in. We're closing out the month of June, and in honor of World Elderly Abuse Awareness Day, which is this month, we have put together this presentation in hopes of providing information, raising awareness on this global issue and its telescopic view through our cultural lens. So, and also, pinpointing, what's happening in our community and what it looks like through our lenses. Next slide, please. All right. So before we get into it, before we dig into, the information and the good stuff, I want to share a little bit about our wellness. So we at the Alliance, we believe in wellness. It is a vital part of the work that we do. And as advocates, educators, trainers, whatever capacity we work in, it is important that we be and stay well or maintain our wellness, support ourselves so that we are able and we can support others. So to start off us off this morning, we have the wonderful Mariah Nautu, who will be leading us in a short wellness exercise today.
Thank you so much, Monica, for that great introduction. For today's wellness, I will lead us with a guided relaxation. So before we begin, go ahead and ground your feet to the ground and try to sit comfortably. Now go ahead and close your eyes and take a deep breath. Let that breath out slowly and fully. Today we are going to learn something important about our amazing bodies. As you relax more and more, you can feel your entire body getting warm and comfortable. Your mind feels relaxed. Your body feels relaxed. All is well. As you rest in this peaceful state, let your mind drift as you listen to my words. Think for a moment about your body. No matter the shape or your size, your body is magnificent and beautiful. Your body is composed of individual cells which work together in harmony to keep you at your very best. Let's think for a moment about your feet. You might have crooked toes. You might have perfectly straight ones. Yet, each and every one is perfect in its own way. Your feet and toes help you move and get to where you want to go. Say a little thank you to your amazing feet that carry you places you want to go. It's very important to keep in mind that you don't need to look like anyone else. You are already the perfect you. Now consider your strong back and shoulders. They help you lift and move things. They hold you up straight and help you walk tall. It's important to be thankful for your strong back and shoulders for carrying what you need to carry in life. Think about your arms and hands now. They help you hug the people you love. Thanks to our arms and hands, we can hold the people we care about during happy times and sad times, too. Be thankful to your arms for how strong and beautiful they are, helping you every day. Finally, think about your beautiful face. There is no other face like yours. You are beautiful. People can see your beautiful inner light shining out through your eyes and even through your smile. Remember today and every day to be very thankful for your marvelous body. It will be with you always to help you experience life and express yourself in many fantastic ways. When you're ready and with another deep breath, open your eyes. You've done a wonderful job relaxing your body and learning to be thankful for it today. Thank you, and back to you, Monica.
Thank you, Mariah. Can we, next slide, please? Thank you again, Mariah, for the wellness exercise this morning. That was quite relaxing and wonderful. So let's just dive right into it, shall we? So our key objectives for today's presentation will cover what is elder abuse, where does elder abuse take place, the types of elder abuse, the facts, the signs, the risk factors. We're going to be diving into through our cultural lens, what does elder abuse look like in our Samoan culture? We're going to get into our code annotated law, talk about our local law, that protects our elders, the impacts of the pandemic, the advocacy and care on a cultural level that includes responding to abuse and tips on care for the caregiver. Next slide, please. So, elder abuse. What is elder abuse? Elder abuse includes physical, emotional, or sexual harm inflicted upon an older adult. Their financial exploitation or neglect of their welfare by people who are directly, responsible for their care. Physically fragile elderly people are less able to care for themselves, resist bullying, or defend themselves if attacked. They can be more difficult companions for those who live with them, if they have mental or physical health issues. Additionally, they may not be as sharp-eyed, hearing, or thinking as they once were, which could present some opportunities for fraudulent individuals to take advantage of the elderly, to take advantage of them. According to the World Health Organization, or WHO, and the U.S. Department of Justice, or USDOJ, they put the definition of elder abuse as is. Elder abuse is a single or repeated act. The lack of appropriate action occurring within any relationship where there is an expectation of trust that causes harm or distress on the elderly person. The significance of this definition, if I must put it, it focuses upon the breach of trust. This is important because it allows us to concentrate on those abuses where it would be reasonable, for the older person to have trusted this abuser, because they can be they can be anybody. For example, they can be your family members, they can be your children, they can be your friends, social care staff, and so forth. Highlighting that these are the people that these elderly put their entire trust in. And also, this definition, it excludes random abuse perpetrated by strangers. Abuse perpetrated by strangers mainly can be, for example, muggings. There have been several definitions for abuse and neglect of an older adult that have developed over time. So, some has even defined it as a violation of an individual's human civil rights by any other person or persons. Next slide, please. All right. So we are now into, where does elder abuse take place at? Abuse can happen to anyone, no matter the person's age, sex, race, religion, or ethical and cultural background. Each year, hundreds and thousands of adults over the age of 60 are abused, neglected, or financially exploited. Elder abuse is real. Elder abuse is happening, and it can be happening right in front of you, and with the lack of information, or you won't be able to tell. So Abuse can happen in many places, including the elderly person's home, a family member's house, at church, in a public setting, or in an assisted living facility or a nursing home. And the list can go on. The mistreatment of older adults can be by family members, again, their children, strangers, healthcare providers, caregivers, or friends, you know, and strangers. Elder abuse and neglect takes place at home. Majority of older adults live in our community either with their own or on their own with their spouses, with their children, siblings, or other relatives, rather than institutional setting. As a result, the home is where most abuse happens. You know, as much as we don't like thinking about it, but these are statistics. This is truth. Older individuals who are frail, alone, or depressed, as well as those with physical disability or mental illness, are vulnerable to abuse. Even those who are not affected by these more visible risk factors can find themselves in abusive situations or relationships. Next slide, please. So we are diving right into types of elder abuse. So this brings us to the slides, the types of elder abuse. This is some of the types, highlighting some, because there are numerous types of elder abuse, but the types or the categories of abuse I will be sharing on are most common ones that are happening, such as physical abuse. Most often we ask ourselves, we know what getting physical means, but what does it mean exactly? The unintentional application of force on an aged person that results in discomfort, harm, or incapacity. Inappropriate uses of medicine, restrictions, or imprisonment are all examples of physical abuse. In addition to physical attacks such as hitting, shoving, kicking, physical abuse can be easily identified because we see movement, gestures, and physical marks from the abuse, which can be bruising, lumps, redness, broken bones, scratches, and so forth. And this abuse can cause scars from abuse inflicted onto the elderly. The next type of abuse that we have is slightly different from being physical, but is quite dangerous also, which is emotional abuse. So the treatment of an older adult in ways that cause emotional or psychological pain or distress can include one, intimidation through yelling or threats and terrorizing, which causing intimidation, making the elderly feel intimidated can cause them fear and discomfort. For example, like the indicated photograph we have below, although you can be verbal, threatening someone or an elderly can cause them fear, in which stems from them believing that these threats that this person is making might lead to physical harm and so forth. Humiliation and ridicule. When you humiliate someone, you're literally degrading their worthiness in front of them. This can cause a lot of loss of confidence. This can cause self-doubt and emotional damage. Blame shifting. The definition for blame shifting is in the word itself. Shifting the blame. In other words, you're intentionally blaming the elder for mistakes of the abuser, or the abuser blaming the elder for their mistakes. Blaming an innocent person for something that the perpetrator themselves did, or shifting the blame, is a crime itself. Another factor that we have there is ignoring the elderly person. So ignoring the elderly person can be recalled as one, ignoring their requests for something they need. a necessity. Ignoring their presence can cause them to have psychological damage, and ignoring that elderly person is unable to care for themselves. Ignoring them and not offering the help and the assistance is abuse. Last but not the least, we have isolating an elder from friends, families, or activities. Isolation is a form of abuse. Not allowing the elder to get fresh air that they need, get into simple activities that can help their well-being, and keeping them from friends and family. Some may say it's not the best decision, to expose them because of bacteria and diseases. But also keep in mind that some people isolate their elderly family members, or elderly in general, because they feel that it's a burden, to look after them as they do activities and spend time with the people that bring them happiness. Next slide, please. So aside from the physical abuse and emotional abuse, we also have neglect. So continuing with the types of abuse, this is what we have. What is neglect? So neglect is a form of mistreatment by individuals, resulting from inadequate attention, especially through carelessness or disregard of the needs of others. That's neglect itself. And then we have their elder neglect. Elder neglect happens when a caregiver fails to protect an elder from harm or meets an elder person's needs in a way that results in risk, serious injury, or refusing or failing to provide an elderly person with such life necessities, just failing to provide the simple things that every living human being needs. We're talking about food, water, clothing, shelter, personal hygiene, medicine, comfort, personal safety, and some of these essentials are included in an implied or agreed upon responsibility to an elder. I want to go into what this means, implied or agreed upon responsibility to an elder. Well, basically means the person responsible for the elder has gone against their own words. It's their duty, when you are given responsibility or accept responsibility of something or someone, it is your duty to take care of that situation, of that person, individual, So basically, again, it means the person responsible for the elderly has gone against their own words. It is their duty to take care of the elderly, yet has neglected their responsibility. Um, you know, uh, some people might say, neglect can be accidental, but in the truth of it, neglect is not an honest accident. It is a result of carelessness and the lack of regard for the well-being of an elder, and this brings us to abandonment. Abandonment, sorry, excuse me. Abandonment is defined as the dissertation of an elderly person by an individual who has assumed responsibility for for providing care for the elder, or by a person with the physical custody of an elder. Deserting an elder or a person that has ties to you is as a responsibility. Leaving them behind to care for themselves is abuse, is neglect. It's abandoning them. I just want to put it out there that neglect can be just as dangerous as other types of abuses. Next slide, please. All right. So we have the next one, types of elder abuse. Again, we have financial exploitation. So elder financial abuse occurs when someone steals money or other things of value from an older person. As people age, they may need the help of others to manage their finances. For example, You might have an elderly mother, elderly father caring for a grandmother, and they might not be able to mobilize themselves, like before, to make bank deposits, cash checks, withdraw money, and so forth. So uh, again, this is where they may need the help of others to manage their finances and care for them. This is especially true in cases where someone has Alzheimer's or dementia, as these conditions cause mental functioning to decline. Unfortunately, elders may put their trust in people who do not have their best interest at heart. You know, rather it's whether it's a relative, it can be a relative, a friend, a caregiver. Anyone may try to steal an elderly's finances in various ways. The unauthorized use of an elderly person's funds or property, either by a caregiver or an outside scam artist, or an unreliable caregiver might, one, misuse an elderly person's check, credit cards, or account, two, steal cash, income checks, or household goods, forge the elder's signature. Forging somebody's signature is a crime itself, but forging the elder's signature is, it falls under the same category um, as elder abuse. So another one is uh, the caretaker or somebody engaging in stealing the stealing information, personal information about the elderly that can go into engaging in identity theft. Financial abuse can be harder to spot than the other types of elder abuse, as it may not physically affect the victim, but in fact, elder financial abuse may go on for years before it's finally caught. Next slide, please. So we come down to sexual abuse. I know it's a little unusual to hear that these actually happen. Sexual contact, or sexual abuse is sexual contact made without the elderly person's consent. Sexual elder abuse includes not just actual sexual acts, but also behaviors like viewing pornographic material with an elderly person, making them witness sex acts, or making them undress. Sexual abuse of an elderly person occurs when a caregiver or another person forces unwanted sexual contact or penetration with an elderly person. Older adults are especially vulnerable to perpetrators of sexual abuse. Perpetrators target individuals, or the elders, who they perceive that are vulnerable or easy to overpower, and they also abuse elders who they think are unlikely to report the abuse or to be believed, alone. Elder abuse can elder sexual abuse can include, you know, uh, the following: sexual contact with an elderly person who is confused or unable to give consent, sexual contact or penetration without the victim's consent, forced nudity, photographing a person in a sexual way without the person's consent. You know, some elderly victims are unable to give consent due to health conditions. As mentioned before, the elderly might have dementia or an Alzheimer's disease. They can be forgetting things, but this abuse is literally happening to them. Elderly women are much more likely to be abused than elderly men this way, through sexual abuse. But most reports of elder sexual abuse come from nursing homes or other care facilities. Perpetrators are, they can be caregivers, employees, other residents, or a person just visiting the facility. elder sexual abuse also happens outside of nursing homes. Often the perpetrators are caregivers, family, spouses, or friends. This type of sexual abuse may be reported less often because of the victim's isolation from other people. Next slide, please. So we are now at the signs of elder abuse. Strange and strange changes to an elderly loved one's emotional, physical, or financial well-being are most typical elder abuse warning signals. Depending on the sort of elder abuse the victim is experiencing, different elder abuse symptoms may be present, but here are only some signs of elder abuse. They can be a long list of signs of elder abuse, but as mentioned before, these are the signs that have stood out more and that I will be presenting on, or these are some of the most common signs of elder abuse, which is injuries such as bruises, cuts, or broken bones. They're much more physical, that's why, because people are able to identify some sort of abuse due to injuries being shown on the elderly person physically. And then we have malnourishment and weight loss. Uh, Malnourishment and weight loss. Usually we'll be able to tell that when somebody is drastically losing weight so fast, unusual weight loss, this is another factor of like being taken into uh nursing homes, or even the elderly person residing in their own homes. The double burden of malnutrition consists of both undernutrition and overweight and obesity, as well as diet related non-communicable diseases. But in other words, being undernutrition, especially if the elderly is receiving benefits, for example, food stamps that can provide meal plans, vegetables, things that the elderly need in order to maintain their weight, in order to be healthy. Especially if there's a caretaker or is placed in a nursing home and these signs come up, there is some signs of malnutrition showing up, which is abuse, and it just tells us that it's happening. Another one is poor hygiene. Again, if the elderly person is placed in a nursing home or has a caretaker at home and shows poor hygiene, there is signs of neglect. Again, signs of abuse. Another one is symptoms of anxiety, depression, or confusion. This can be caused by the factor of being emotionally abused. As mentioned before, being ridiculed, belittled, and ongoing verbal abuse can cause an elderly person to slowly deteriorate in their mental health, as other people may put it, slowly fading away, from their mental health. Another one is unexplained transactions or loss of money. Again, going into the types of elder abuse, financial exploitation. When the elderly does not recognize or remember giving consent to use his or her finances or money, they're unable to recall themselves using this money. Caregivers constantly are abusing their benefits. For example, it's not only caregivers. This can apply to family members. This can apply to their children, their lawyers, people who have access to their financial documents and just to their financial in general. So They're constantly abusing these benefits, for example, social security checks, food stamp, retirement money, and so forth. Um, and last but not the least, we have withdrawal from family members or friends. If an elderly person shows or starts withdrawing from being around people they love to spend their time with, it can get a little unusual, because there is a problem there. We have to ask ourselves and ask the elderly, is there a reason why, you know, is there a reason why they are this way? And most of the time it's because of, again, their mental health and their emotional stability. So these are just some of the signs of elder abuse that we can often identify as we go on. Um, Next slide, please. So we are here. We are going to be discussing a lot about the risk factors of elder abuse. First things first, we see ageism. Ageism covers discrimination and assumptions of helplessness, vulnerability, and reliance that have an impact on the respect, value, and chances given to older people for empowerment, self-determination, and the realizations of their rights. Ageism can lead to feelings of worthiness, worthlessness, dependency, loneliness. It can cause the elderly person to have low self-esteem. It can increase the likelihood of, elder abuse, going right into dependency. Opportunities for elder abuse increase for people who are more dependent on others for assistance, or social, emotional, physical, financial, or spiritual support. But this doesn't mean that all older people who depend on others would be abused. Personal dignity, assets, and finances, freedom from harm and well-being can still be maintained even when a person's autonomy is affected. We have family dynamics and living arrangements. Shared living arrangements and giving care have advantages as well as disadvantages. So increasing interaction with others, freedom, and staying in the community longer are all, the clear advantages of family dynamics and living arrangements. But the proximity of shared living arrangements and caregiver responsibilities may cause stress, anxiety and conflict within families, which can lead to elder abuse and mistreatment. We have gender there. To think about it, abuse does happen, both older women and older men. But statistics, they suggest that more women are abused than men, although more men are experiencing abuse by family members, commonly by adult children. Women's family, social and cultural roles are important factors contributing to power imbalances and shifts in control, which can increase the risk of abuse. Now, for example, an older woman who has historically always relied on others to manage her financial affairs may have limited awareness, again, financial exploitation, or financial literacy. And this person is at greater risk of financial abuse, by relatives, their kids, their friends, their families, again, relatives, neighbors, the list can go on, and then we have financial hardships. So having financial difficulties, regardless of age, can impact on the risk of an older person being financially abused. If they are unresolved financial issues in the family, or if a carer has financial issues, a vulnerable older person, again, vulnerable older person may find their resources inappropriately targeted. You know, people who have these financial problems, uh, they take advantage of the vulnerable, and this is what this means. A vulnerable older person may find their resources inappropriately targeted. Their resources, such as benefits, financial benefits, and so forth. So there is also evidence showing that older people who have financial means and are asset rich can also be at risk of being financially targeted and abused, even if they are not vulnerable. So again, you can be vulnerable and not vulnerable, but um, somehow they still find that they make ends meet. They both, being vulnerable and vulnerable, but they're still getting abused either way. Because of, again, the benefits that they receive versus the lack of financial support that the abuser might have, and the benefits that the elderly have. It, again, targeted and abused. Then we have social isolation. Older people who are socially isolated are less likely to be aware of available health and community support services or access in a timely way. Now, isolations of both older people and carers, as we are talking, is a known risk factor for elderly abuse. Examples include restricted or minimal contact with others, spiritual support, sharing time with friends, families, or neighbors, when combined with the factors such as cultural diversity, older age and fertility, and the poor health literacy. Isolation is associated with increased risk for mistreatment and elder abuse. Diving right into mental health or psychological conditions. Mental health issues and or psychological conditions have the potential to affect people's behavior in a wide range of ways. At the beginning of our presentation, I talked about the importance of mental health. This is where we input these, how do you say, um, ways that we can help build, rebuild, or heal our affected mental health and psychological conditions. Depending on an individual's circumstances, this can include the ability to control anger, frustration, fear, impulse. Mental health conditions can be a risk factor for abuse if a family member, care, or older person themselves has a mental health condition. You know, People with a mental health condition may have feelings of low self-esteem, self-worth, or could be more vulnerable due to the effects of just medications. And last but not the least, we have carer stress. Without the assistance of unpaid carers, more older people will rely on residential aged care facilities, or in simple forms, we can say nursing homes, for their care. But unpaid carers can be responsible for a range of tasks and decisions. Some carers may feel they do not have a choice, while others do not identify themselves as a carer, rather seeing themselves as a good spouse, a daughter, a son, a sibling, a friend, fulfilling cultural expectations. Caring for another person, whether it's a family member, a neighbor, or a friend, or is both rewarding but also challenging. Special demands on carers often mean they juggle or struggle with responsibilities, frustrations, lack of resources, or compromising their own needs. Older carers may feel isolated or have problems with their own health. These pressures, they can increase the risk of abuse to those being cared for or to care themselves. Next slide, please. Now, this brings us to our next slide, which we will touch base on through our cultural lens. Now, like many other places, American Samoa is no different. Elder abuse is out of sight, but it is very much happening. The increase of number of senior populations in American Samoa makes it necessary to tackle elder abuse and neglect. As Samoans who care for their own parents and families, it is believed and seen to be a source of blessing, to take care of our seniors. It's our natural way. It's our way of life. And this may be the reason why it is not discussed in our families or homes. This poses a problem when there is elder abuse, making it difficult to identify warning signs as well as providing support through advocacy. You know, Notably, elders are a vulnerable population that deserve protection because elderly abuse continues to grow in our homes. According to the Territorial Administrative Office of Aging, or TAWA, current director Evelyn Satile Lilio said the most common cases seen of elder abuse is neglect. And there is an increased number of senior citizens who are suffering from dementia, and caregivers may not be equipped to care for these elders, with these certain conditions. Um, uh, caring for your elder who has a medical disorder, is you put your utmost attention there and you take care of them as the best as you can. But also, we need to keep in mind that you need to have the proper training. You need to know what you're doing. You need to understand what they need, and so forth. So increased frustration for caregivers and um happens, and it's a real situation. Frustration can increase as elders become increasingly frail and are less able to take care of themselves. So seniors may find themselves not remembering, making them or at risk or defenseless against caregivers. A local advocate shared an incident during an abused house visit and was surprised to find an elderly woman that was tied to a bed, as family members went to work. Our local newspaper posted stories of financial stories, where abusers have stolen monies from their parents, aunts, uncles, diving right into, the elder abuse. Director Leo mentions embezzling or intentionally mismanaging the assets of an elderly person and disabled, committing fraud in obtaining their appointments, and failing to provide them care, supervision, and services necessary may maintain their mental health. Changes in socioeconomic fabric of the territory, are affecting the care for the elderly. Young adults who used to look after their grandparents are now seeking higher education or joining the workforce, and there's no one to look after the elderly at home. When Catholic Church Diocese of Samoa Pampanga first opened a nursing home facility 30 plus years ago, few in any families place elderly members for their family in the facility, but now there is a waiting list. This trend may represent the knowledge that elder may best be served in such a care facility. Additionally, around the same time, the Territorial Administration on Aging Office, which is TAWA, was reporting as many as 10 cases of elderly abuse per month and defined a need for shelter for the abused elders. For many, this is a profound example of something going dreadfully wrong in our local community. So this proves that, elder abuse is not new to our territory, although we just recently passed a bill into 3 years ago. Next slide, please. Awesome. So now we are going into we are moving on to the continuing cultural lens. So elder abuse is not talked about much in a culture where the elderly are regarded as I'm sorry. So elder abuse is not talked about much, in a culture where the elderly are regarded as treasures and caring for them is seen as a source of blessing, because that is what we believe in, but it's happening. At the top of Samoa's cultural sets of values, we have fa'awalo or respect. We learn from a very young age to defer to anyone who is older than us, and then to, truly honor the parents who feed, clothe, house, teach, and have often sacrificed for us. Related to fa'awalo is the concept of tautua, or the tautua, um, or the service of or the service for most Samoans. And underlying philosophy in our family structure is that children serve their parents forever. Until recently, it was almost unheard of for someone elderly to go, to rest or into a retirement homes. In tradition, Samoan society, the extended family cared for their elderly without outside assistance. But those ways may be changing in modern American Samoa society, as it's possibly becoming more difficult, to work in the economy and care for the elderly at the same time. It's more likely the elders will live out their lives with, one of their children, usually the eldest daughter, whose siblings would help, with the financial cost of their parents' care. The idea is, if you are a loving, obedient child who takes good care of your parents, when you become a parent yourself, it's natural, the head of your own household, you will then be blessed by the service of, your own children. We're going into respect through service. We demonstrate our respect through our elders by treating them basically like royalty. Elderlies are supposed to eat first when meals are served. At meal times, not only do our elders, and if they have guests over, and our guests, they eat first. They are also waited on by the younger folk, who should always be on hand to fetch a glass of water or to refill a plate of food and sit nearby, to fan off the flies away as the elders ate. Um, or clear used dishes away and bring a bowl of warm soapy water for hand washing, or apafafango, yeah, that is still a thing. It's still a thing. So of course, it's not just around food that we show respect for our elders. We are going into etiquette in the presence of our elders. For Samoans who moved to the Western countries, one source of culture shock is hearing how some children talk to their parents, or even talk back to their parents. Respect for our elders is also demonstrated through our body language. If an elder is sitting on a chair, the young person sits on the floor. When you're speaking with an elder, he or she is sitting, and you have to make sure you're sitting down too. Towering over someone you're talking to comes off as confrontational, and you don't want to do that with someone you're supposed to respect. From a Samoan perspective, if you're going to have a conversation with your elders who are seated, please sit down. If you're going to eat something, especially while your elders are around, sit down. Elders should always eat first. Not everybody's family practices our culture the same way. Not everyone agrees with how our cultural values are demonstrated. Some of our traditions don't seem relevant anymore to some of the Samoans. The core principle and practices of the Fa Samoa do not condone any form of violence in the Samoan families. The Vatapuia, or sacred place between family members, are violated by any form of violence, including elder abuse. It is disruption of balance and harmony of the relationships, of well-being between family members, parents, children, vice versa, siblings. The list can go on. Ainga is where the Vatapuia is preserved and protected. Violations of the Vatapuia towards family members, especially elders, create sites of terror, suffering and dysfunction. Pat Samoa is the overreaching philosophical framework by which prevention and intervention approaches in family violence are addressed. Meaning that when we as people understand our culture and our way of life, our Samoan way, when we understand the different principles that inform and guide us, and that our Samoa is all about respect, love, then we should be good. We should be able to do away from violence. At the top of the, again, at the top of the Samoa culture set of values is, fa'awalo, respect. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I wanted to share on our local law, again, highlighting local law, local law on elder abuse, that we can't mention enough. Now, if you didn't know, in October 2018, Governor Lolo Matalasimolinga signed into law, the American Samoa Administration Bill, Elderly and Disabled Adult Neglect, Abuse, and Exploitation Prevention Act. I went ahead and displayed the law on our presentation, but in citing into this law, the governor the governor said that neglect, abuse, exploitation of elderly and the abused disabled adults is a growing problem, with the vast majority of incidents that are unreported. He said the territory's most vulnerable, deserves the utmost protection. The law criminalizes and prevents neglect, abuse, and exploitations of the elderly and disabled adult population in the territory. Elderly abuse statutes, public law number 35-17, is criminalizing and preventing the neglect, abuse, and exploitation of elders. Next slide, please. Awesome. So we are now diving into the impacts of the pandemic. This is not just pertaining to us. This is happening everywhere. Now, during the pandemic, the most vulnerable sector of the population was, our elderly population, particularly those with underlying and chronic health conditions. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, experts have raised the alarm about a heightened risk of elder abuse. Many older adults faced national lockdowns, social isolation, movement restriction, closures of schools and non-essential services, experienced financial instability, or relied heavily on their caregivers. Factors have been linked to elder abuse in the past. No age group has been spared from the effects of COVID-19 containment measures, but numerous adults in the labor force have been laid off, and women have endured increasing domestic violence. Children have suffered from educational disruption and limited outdoor exposures, and older adults are put at higher risks for social isolation in the community and institutional settings. Despite the data on the subject has been limited. Global studies and researches show a shifting of patterns of abuse, and that during the pandemic, higher rates of emotional and physical abuse were reported. A higher percentage of contacts, I'd say 27.1% during the pandemic versus 18.7% before, also reported more than one form of abuse happening at the same time, which is crazy. Studies also shown that abuse have been on the rise since the pandemic struck. This could be attributed to various reasons, such as I could say stay-at-home orders that forced victims to stay in close proximities, to abusers, or simply staying in the same space and area, as their abusers. Deprivation of social interaction and physical contact with friends makes it easier for abusers to control, manipulate, and mistreat older adults, as they, would be less interference and informal surveillance, thus lowering chances of detection. We have social distancing. We've catched a glimpse of that, within our island when we first brought out social distancing. Everybody was having a hard time, but social distancing measures that render vulnerable women and children socially isolated, thus having less chance to speak and, to speak up, seek help, you know, um, cessation of non-essential services that restricts domestic violence victims to access aid, and the negative economic impact that causes anxiety and household tension. When applied to older adults, all these factors are likely to amplify, as old age is often compounded by chronic diseases, physical limitations, dependency on caregivers, and, institutionalization. You know, Many older adults reside in rural areas and derive physical and social support from frequent visits by children and relatives. When social visits and gatherings are banned, they are more likely to feel a negative impact of this measure. Um, there can be loss of support among older adults who have limited physical function or specific medical needs, can easily compromise their safety and health and make them victims of and you say unintentional neglect. Nursing home residents, they are even at greater risk of isolation and loneliness, as visitors are visiting hours, they restrict it, in order to avoid, again, catching diseases or disease transmission. Or among the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, you know, uh, I can say that health related services as resources are channeled to COVID-19 control and treatment. You know, there's a lot of the COVID-19 pandemic, it caused disruption of medical and health related services. Older adults may find their scheduled appointments canceled, repeatedly delayed, and their access to medications for chronic illnesses interrupted. Similarly, other health related and long-term care services such as rehabilitation and assistance with activities of the daily living might be, temporarily halted or stopped. This could be due to a change in a policy by service providers to reduce the risk of diseases transmissions, or let's say inadequate manpower when healthcare and social workers have contracted COVID-19 or are put under quarantine. So the dynamics of, EA in times of COVID are diverse, and complex. This health crisis can trigger EA by, EA, or I'm shortened it, elder abuse, by affecting other adults. So caregivers and also the caregiving context. Next slide, please. So we are now into the advocacy and care on a cultural level. So cultural values, again, have significant effect on beliefs about health and well-being. Most specific culture places individuals within a context of a larger group, like for example, a family, a clan, a village, and so forth. The physical environment within which they live, and their churches structures. Traditional Samoan culture is rooted in strong family dynamics, a powerful tie to the land, a deep reverence for the church. And then there's respect again for both reciprocity and authority. As a result, Samoans may link poor health and disharmony across these domains, as well as to Aitu, or spirits. Research findings suggest that Pacific Island families expect to care for their elders in Samoan communities. You know, in Samoan communities, elders are responsible for imparting traditional Samoan culture onto younger generation, also in the contradiction to Western views of aging as decline. When Pacific Islanders tend to think positively about aging, as growing old signifies a periods in one's life where one can slow down and have loved ones, take care of them. Um, in the Pacific, across all islands and nations, care is still provided to old people by their families, or elderly people by their families. It remains as far better modeled for the Pacific. In Samoa, when you are old, or when you're an elder, you are looked after by your children. What better system is there? This is said by Reverend Dr. Smith at an aging and spirituality conference in New Zealand. The links to homes in the Pacific are still strong, he says, but sometimes the strong ties that ensure elderly are taken care of can be broken or have broken. So care away from family may be needed as well. Advocacy and care giving on cultural level can sometimes be viewed as challenging, especially for outside advocates who are advocating, for elders who are cared for within their own homes and by their own children, who sometimes, are the abusers, whether we like it or not. This is the truth. So from a Pacific perspective, delivery of healthcare and spirituality to elderly involves an understanding, an articulation of three key elements. The person's sense of belonging is one, their cultural desire for good relationship, and the Pacific concept of harmony. Indigenous cultural values, beliefs, and practices, are practices are as much practices as much mutual respect, sacredness of human relations, reciprocity in family supports, connection, to the land, and a collective identity that is based on, again, spirituality, physiological, and just the history are taught in the arms of our elders. That's how history has been passed down. Our elders, they hold our stories. They have they hold our stories. They have our history. And Pacifica people establish relationship based upon respect. Respect is offered in a way that does not undermine your mana or my mana. Think of the other person first and not yourself. This is order in a which way that the Pacific societies are structured. It's the most ideal way of living in close communities, and it points towards values and informed behaviors and reflects the community needs at the same time. In Samoan and other Pacific societies, you don't speak first. You have to listen first to what is being said. You let others tell their stories first. This needs to be considered in aging care and healthcare. For anyone engaging in care of the elderly, these concepts remain very important. We need to show how these things are important and how they can be used. It is important to recognize that spirituality is central to holistic care for older generations of the Pacific Islanders. Supporting the well-being of these elders is critical to ensuring the well-being of their families, and communities across generations. Specific to Samoan culture, a person is a relational being legitimized by sacred relationships, with people, land, and also the spiritual world. This information hopefully will help improve the way that advocates provide their care and support by understanding the roles of elders within our communities and culture and how they deliver the advocacy at a cultural level, especially to a population where everything about their culture is handed down from them to the next generation. Next slide, please. So, responding to elder abuse. If you are suspecting elder abuse and neglect, check the first thing you can do, you know, check in with your loved one. Some elders may be hesitant or scared to bring up their abuse experiences, but with gentle prompting, they might or may, confide in you. Take accusations seriously. Too many people neglect to believe elders when they tell loved ones about their abuse. Seriously, look into any abuse that your loved one tells you about. You never know, what you may find. But again, take these accusations seriously. Another one is keep in regular contact with your loved one. Elders who are socially isolated are more at risk for abuse. Doesn't hurt to take your time out. Just check in on them, keep in regular contact, give them a call, pay them a visit. Little gestures like that, can change their risk of being abused. Use available resources is one. If you suspect a case of elder neglect, self-neglect, or abandonment, contact a local adult proactive services, long-term care, nursing homes, or might even, call the police. If it's an emergency, please call the police, call 911. If you are worried that an elder person is in immediate danger, call the police, call 911. The first consideration is always, of course, whether the older adult is in immediate danger. So please keep that in mind. Response and prevention strategies for elder abuse are numerous and varied. It's important to remember that anyone can help at some level. Learn when and how to report abuse. Get help for commonly seen suspicious situations involving, I'll say, possible abuse of elders and adults with, disabilities that cannot help themselves. Learn about the agencies and organizations that respond to reports of abuse. Learn, what some communities and multidisciplinary teams are doing to prevent abuse from occurring. Explore how the many fields and organizations that serve elders and adults with disabilities may play a role in abuse, intervention and prevention. So to learn how to prevent abuse through volunteerism and also, basically just simple raising the awareness on elderly abuse. So, responding to elderly abuse in American Samoa, I have listed some of the departments or offices that you can reach out to. We have the Office of Protection and Advocacy for the Disabled. I've placed their contact number there, or they're also called OPAD. We have TAWA, Territorial Administrative Office in Aging. Also, keep in mind their new facilities in Tafuna are a reminder of the cultural heritage and critical role that the elderly citizens play in preserving it. Also, Governor Lolo Molinga's vision to relocate the Tawa Center from Pampanga after the 2009 tsunami, which killed the 5 senior citizens who were at site. So the Tawa Center is now in Tafuna. I've also put their phone number there. We have the CSS, or Catholic Social Services. You can contact them with that number giving. We also have DHSS. We have the Department of Human and Social Services. Also, their contact number is there. You can go ahead and save it. But if comes down to it that you do not want to contact these offices, you feel like you're going through a lot of trouble trying to contact these offices and so forth, you are more than welcome to contact the Alliance. More information on that will be shared at the conclusion of our presentation. But yes, next slide, please. So we have care for the caregiver. Now, this entire presentation we have shared upon care for the elder, but also we need to look at the opposite side, where the caregiver, might need some tips or tools that can help them develop themselves into better caregivers, or and so forth. So if you're someone who's taking care of your parents or caregiving for other seniors, your wellness and self-care is also vital for yourself, and especially those that you care for. So here are some important self-care tips for caregivers that I have listed. Make time for yourself and take routine breaks without feeling guilty. Even something as simple as taking 30 minutes of an alone time to read or take a walk, it can make a huge difference. It can help you. You'll be a much better caregiver if you're not on duty 24/7. You need some rest also. Exercise to relieve stress, whether it's a long walk, an hour of yoga, or a bike ride in the country, in our village, just around the area. Do something that you enjoy. Regular exercise is good habit for caregivers, to develop. Eat as healthfully as you can. Make sleep a priority. Cannot stress out enough how important getting some sleep is. And you need that rest. We need that rest. Caregivers need that rest. Use relaxation techniques. For many people, taking care of caregivers, involve forms of quiet self-care. Simple practices such as mindfulness, prayer, meditation, or progressive muscle relaxation can help relieve stress. A great example is what Mariah now to displayed this morning. It can be as short as 5 minutes, as long as you are meditating, taking in that positive energy and just releasing the negatives. And those are some of the practices that you can do that can help with your mindful, with your mental health. Whatever you choose to do, make it a part of your daily routine. Just 5 minutes out of your day. You can go as much as you like. You can take it up to 15 minutes or more, or you can go lower. But the importance of it is literally you are placing your mental health first. You need to be mentally stable in order to give care to these elderly people. Find caregiver resources. High on any list of caregiver tips is developing a good support system. Find local or online support groups. Nothing beats exchanging ideas and experiencing with people who are in similar situations. There are online programs available also to support caregivers who are facing a variety of challenges in caring for older adults in the home setting. So make that time, just 15 minutes, do your research, try to find resources that can help you if you are a caregiver, it can help the caregiver let's say, progress more into being better. Can we have our next slide, please? Now, because of our time and given the fact that we have come to the end of our presentation today, I would like to thank you everyone for taking their time out today to join us in this webinar. Hopefully our presentation today was able to provide some sort of information, more important information on elder abuse, and I hope that this has become yet another educational opportunity for you all. So for more information on our programs, services, and the work of the Alliance, or even questions about our presentation today, please do not hesitate to contact us through various ways. We have our website. You can visit us at www.asalliance.co. We also take messages on our Facebook page. You can do that. Page is under American Samoa Alliance Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. You can also shoot us an email, send us an email at training@asadsv.com, or call our office and ask for Monica Veville or Judy Mtautia through 684-699-0272. And thank you again. We appreciate you all for joining us today. Have a blessed rest of the day. Faftai.
The phrase, "I work from home," used to make us picture a coupon clipping mom at her kitchen table, scissors in hand and surrounded by newspapers and color-coded envelope files, or Papa up at the crack of dawn weeding the taro patch. In reality, prior to COVID-19, only 7% of Americans enjoyed the luxury of working from home. However, since the pandemic, nationwide surveys conducted reveal that 42% of the U.S. labor force is now working from home full-time. Thanks to worldwide efforts to stem the spread of COVID-19 and its mutations, physical lockdowns or stay-at-home orders are the norm. In preparation for the inevitable first case of COVID-19 in American Samoa, some workplaces began modified remote work protocols in mid-2020. The new remote work protocol allows team members to work from home, some with a weekly check-in in person, while practicing physical distancing. In-person meetings are replaced with Zoom calls, email usage is increased, and the workplace is physically modified. While these modifications enhance physical safety and encourage physical distancing practices, they also create a sense of social distancing that may not encourage the type of interaction team members are used to or sustain a team mindset. It can negatively affect morale and, combined with other issues going on within the home, may create a negative work culture. Here are 4 tips for creating a positive work culture while working from home. Tip number 1, encourage virtual social hours. Team members can regularly eat together, virtually sharing lunch and sometimes even breakfast. On these occasions, they can share stories, give each other feedback, and even talk about work from the comfort of their own homes. Tip number 2, get together weekly to discuss your team's work to-do checklists. Talk about project updates, or have a feel-good forum where everyone can post positive things, share resources, or request help on projects. Tip number 3, celebrate and acknowledge team members virtually. Give team members a virtual high five to let them know they're doing a great job. Tip number 4, recreate office traditions in virtual formats. Prior to COVID, a local office group held quarterly Me Day sessions. The activities were focused on improving wellness and teamwork among team members. It was a time for personal expression, decompression, and focusing on the individual. Virtual painting sessions, cooking meals while playing a game called Guess What I'm Cooking, or even reciting favorite poetry. Ultimately, these tips encourage taking the positive aspects of the workplace into the virtual workspace. It's important to note that this office group equipped each team member with the technology needed to work effectively at home, including internet access and workspace equipment. Now that's using your COVID-19 funding wisely.